recording. I'll share my screen. Okay. Let me. Oops. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Setareh Feizi. I work in Dr. Nicole Rafferty's lab, and I am a fourth year and a Chancellor's Research Fellow. And today I will be presenting my project on how floral functional traits vary across an elevational gradient. I'd like to take a quick second to thank my research advisor, Dr. Nicole Rafferty, and the PhD students from the lab, Elijah Hall, Annika Rose Person, and Christopher Cosma. So to get started, as we all know, climate change is a major issue, and it's been shown to have a major impact on temperature and precipitation trends. So it's been found that plants are responding to climate change spatiotemporally. So they're shifting to higher elevations. And the paper that I've cited, the golden paper, is a really popular paper, but climate change impacts plants in other ways, as I've shown here. So it advances their flowering timing, which is called phenology, and it changes or affects some of their floral functional traits. And to go deeper on functional traits, they are traits that facilitate physical interactions between organisms. Specifically with flowers, they have a mutual relationship with pollinators. They both benefit from each other. And so floral functional traits could be anything such as flower size, flower number, flower corolla length, nectar sugar content, and pollen quality. And these are just things that make flowers more, how do you say it, attractive to pollinators and will help ensure their survival. Okay, so to illustrate my point, I've created a small animation. So this is our focus plant right here, and has great floral functional traits. It's within its temperature and precipitation needs. So a pollinator comes in and pollinates it, and it successfully can produce seeds and reproduce. Now the temperature has risen due to climate change, so and it's not receiving the precipitation that it needs, so it's gotten a lot smaller and there's less of it at this elevation. And so the pollinator comes in and decides to go to a much more attractive plant at a higher elevation over here that has its precipitation needs met. So my question is, how do floral functional traits change along an elevational gradient? And I hypothesize that because higher elevations have decreased temperature and water stress, they will exhibit favorable floral functional traits. So going into the research methods, this research was supposed to have been done at the Boyd Deep Canyon Research Center in Indian Wells, and along an elevational range of 1,400 to 2,300 meters. And this research center is really great because it has over 5 distinct habitat types and a vast array of species. And our method, we would be using the space for time substitution. So instead of waiting for one plant to move all the way up in elevation, we can compare the floral functional traits at different elevations to infer the trajectory of the plant itself. So we have 5 focal species. It's California brittle-bush, grape soda lupine, the genus Phacelia, desert globe mallow, and chaparral yucca. And as you can see from these photos, they're very diverse. They're all different sizes, different colors. And this will allow us to have a much more generalizable idea of how elevation and climate change are affecting floral functional traits, and in turn, how it affects pollination. So from each flower, I would be collecting data. So the physical traits such as flower size, the color of the flower, the corolla depth, the landing pad size, and the number of flowers per bundle, as well as collecting nectar in microcapillary tubes, as well as pollen. And from this, I would quantify how much pollen came from each flower and the nectar sugar content. And then using a photospectrometer would allow me to determine the protein, lipid, and carbohydrate quantities. And this can give us a better idea of how attractive the flower is to pollinators and the viability of pollination itself. So because this research was not completed, I've created some hypothetical figures. So on the y-axis, you can see that this is the floral functional trait and the x-axis is elevation. So as elevation gets higher and higher, the floral functional trait increases in desirability or attractiveness. So these are just 3 of the 5 focal species, and they all reside within a certain range of elevation. So as you go higher and higher, they become a little more attractive to pollinators. And the reason why I chose this linear relationship is because lower elevations in the plants are more seriously affected by drought. And so that's why I thought if it went higher in elevation, it would be more attractive to pollinators. And the significance of this is that pollinators can change their behavior in response to floral functional traits across the landscape. And climate change is impacting certain environments more than others. The impacts of climate change could be additionally worsened by a lack of functionally compatible floral resources. So this work is needed to determine how future plant communities will respond to both abiotic and biotic shifts due to climate change. And then these are my works cited. And then I'd like to give, again, a quick thank you to my research advisor, Dr. Rafferty, the PhD students in the lab, the Chancellor's Research Fellows, and Gladys Herrera-Berkowitz. And thanks again, Elijah, for the images. Thank you.
Thanks, Setareh.